Evening and welcome to the Winthrop School Committee meeting of Monday, February 8th, 2021 at 6 p.m. The meeting is being held via Zoom teleconference. Ms. Hames, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Here.
Mr. Boncory?
Here.
Mr. Capabianco?
Here.
Mr. Matucci?
Yep.
Ms. Swope?
Here.
Ms. Powell?
Present.
Mr. Perrin?
Present. This meeting will be recorded and may be televised live. Mr. Boncory, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I sure can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The chair anticipates going into executive session to conduct strategy sessions for contract negotiations for non-union personnel. The chair will accept a motion to go into executive session for contract negotiation for non-union personnel. This session concerns the employment agreement of the superintendent of school, Lisa Howard. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I request that we take
Move.
past. There's a lot of folks on it who would like to talk about the internet issues, and I think they're eager to hear the superintendent's report. I would prefer if we just did this at the end of the meeting.
I'd rather stick to the executive session because we have our attorney waiting for us in executive session. So I don't want to delay our attorney to explain the terms of the agreement. And I appreciate that their patience, but that is the situation we have, is that our attorney is waiting for us in executive session.
Motion to move to executive session.
Second.
Second by Ms. Powell. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Can I get a roll call vote, please, Patty?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Capabianco?
No.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. Okay, we'll be exiting out and returning shortly after the completion of our executive session. We are back from our executive session. The next item is public comment. I want to remind those participating in public comment to keep their comments to within 3 minutes to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to put forth their comments. And this is not a question and answer period or debate on issues, but for the public comment for school committee members to consider when making decisions now or in the future. Please use the raise hand function when you are looking to speak so that Patty may recognize that you are looking to make a comment. Patty, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do. We have Andriana Pavlos.
Yep, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to comment. Our students are approaching their 5th week of hybrid learning. Thus far, we've had 0 days of in-school spread. School sports started in January, and football will be kicking off this month. Our nation, and more specifically the Commonwealth, are phasing in vaccines for at-risk populations and essential workers, in addition to lifting of restrictions on the reopening the state of Massachusetts. In-person learning can be done safely with reasonable precautions. I'm calling tonight to request the school committee start the discussion with administration regarding 4-day in-person learning and set a timeline to get this off the ground. All of our students should be given this access, prioritizing students with disabilities and our youngest learners. There are districts such as Marshfield, Hanover, Quincy, Duxbury, Burlington, Melrose, Milton, the list could go on, that are leading the way in implementing a multitude of models for 4-day in-person learning. I know the planning for this requires extensive time and coordination, as we saw with our first attempts to shift to hybrid. Therefore, the discussion needs to start now. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Do we have any further public comment?
Yes, we do. Let's see, Kathleen.
Hi, Patty.
Is this Kathleen?
It is.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Kathleen Capriccio. Many of you know me, but I'm the mother of 2 middle school students and 1 high school student. Following up on the great comment that the woman made prior, it's going to be a little duplicative. School has been in hybrid for almost a month. Winter sports are being played with great success from a COVID standpoint. I truly hope the committee puts forth a vote to have our students back in school full time, or at a minimum of 4 days a week. I'm sorry, I apologize. 4 days a week, and maybe 1 day for cleaning if the school administration feels they can't get that cleaning done during after school hours. Despite best efforts from our teachers, our students are losing academically. Despite best efforts of parents trying to deal with the isolation of our children, many being stuck in their bedrooms during remote days, many children are suffering emotionally and mentally. The research states it. Last academic year when COVID began and many school systems went remote, maybe it was a reasonable assumption to say that we all were in the same boat. All the students were in the same boat. That is no longer the case. Many students are back in school full time, or at least 4 days a week. Sorry, I lost him. Sorry. I'm reading off my notes. I have heard and completely understand my children saying, "Mom, do you know how hard it is to learn this way?" I've noticed with one of my children, especially who, academically hasn't struggled in the past, is really struggling with math and science specifically. Children learn very, very differently. They do not all learn the same way. And kids are suffering. I can see it with my children. One of my children, for example, generally speaking, very outgoing, always involved in things. It's hard to get, I'll say him, it's hard to get them out of the bedrooms. We really need to do what's right by these kids, follow the CDC guidelines, follow all the protocols that we need to. Children are not in the same boat. Children are suffering, and that's just fact. I beg the school committee to please put our children first and get them back to school physically in the school building. Thank you.
We have the Winthrop Teachers Association.
Hi, Patty. This is Kristin Reynolds. I am a president of the Winthrop Teachers Association, and I'm a 3rd grade teacher at the Cumming School. I have something to read on behalf of the our executive board, and then I have a comment of my own. We, the Winthrop Teachers Association, have dedicated ourselves to making the best of a very difficult situation this year. Through all of the challenges we have faced as a school community, we have worked to make use of our talents and experience to recreate our curricula to match the needs of the moment. As we are approaching the point where we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel on this pandemic, we urge the school committee to reaffirm their commitment to keep us, our students, and all of our families safe. Relaxing safety protocols in any way will increase the risk to all of us, including raising the risk of school closures due to COVID infections in the classrooms. We are eagerly anticipating the arrival of vaccines in our community and the extra layer of safety they will provide to all. So in addition to that, I want to speak personally in favor of social distancing at 6 feet. And I want to read from the CDC website under their section called COVID-19 Prevent Getting Sick. And the first thing it says is, limiting close face-to-face contact with others is the best way to reduce the spread of coronavirus disease. To practice social or physical distancing, stay at least 6 feet from other people who are not from your household. Social distancing should be practiced in combination with other everyday preventative actions to reduce the spread of COVID-19. It goes on to say that in addition to practicing everyday steps to prevent COVID-19, keeping a space between you and others is one of the best tools we have to avoid being exposed to this virus and slowing its spread in the community. So it is important to stay at least 6 feet away from other people and wear a mask to slow the spread of COVID-19. So again, I'm just urging the continuation of the protocols that we have in place in the Winthrop Public Schools of maintaining a 6 feet distance. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you. Let's see, we have Todd. Todd?
I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Oh man, this phone.
We can hear you now.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Todd Sacco, Precinct 2. Not going to waste your time repeating what the others have already so eloquently said. However, I do want to one comment on the previous speaker's notes or comments. I find it interesting, and I'm happy and excited that she's quoting the CDC. Perhaps she could continue scrolling down the page where it clearly says schools are safer than your home, statistically speaking. I just think it's enough is enough with this. The facts and the science are on our side. I don't want 4 days, I want 5. I want return to normal. I think I've watched how things need to be cleaned to meet with CDC guidelines. We can do it after school hours. We don't have to end a whole day. I will take a 4-day week, but I'm pleading with you people to get us back to some level of normalcy 5 days a week. Thank you.
We have a caller. I don't have a name, but. Hello?
Hi, this is Suzanne Carson. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. First, I'd just like to thank the school committee members, administrators, and teachers for helping our kids get a foot in the door and start the hybrid model this year. I know it's not easy, and I understand it's still not easy, especially with the recent DDoS attack. I have a child in 1st grade and one in 3rd. I'm hoping that the school committee and administrators are moving forward in their plan for in-person learning with a remote learning option for those that don't want to go to the school. The full remote for my household worked well, but for the reasons children need to be in school, I'm glad they are now. But the hybrid model isn't working well as I hoped. Instead of getting consistent instruction, my kids have long breaks in the day that are asynchronous. And asynchronous in thought is nice, especially, some kids need that. But for my house and for many parents that are still working, my husband and I swap days at home. And on these long breaks, it's tough to keep kids on track and on what they need to be doing. So my kids need to have the consistent instruction. And with the DDoS attack, we see how vulnerable the hybrid model can be. Again, I'm privileged to be able to work that way with my kids and at home. But not all families in Winthrop are, that they're not privileged to stay home and give this steady attention to their children when they need it. And those kids are missing out. These are families in town that have to choose to stay home with their kids instead of working to pay their rent. Some of them have to take their kids to work with them. Some of them have to pay the programs in town money that they don't have to work, or they lose their jobs. So some of them are not even getting the steady meals that they would at school. Some of them don't have the steady internet at home. This model cannot be sustained. So with this, I hope that the school committee, administrators in town are looking towards the in-person learning model sooner than later. I understand that there are the CDC guidelines. I hope that they can do it safely. I assume, like the other callers had mentioned, other districts are doing it. I'm assuming that they will not put their kids at risk when they've made those decisions to be in person. So I'm hoping Winthrop can look at those models and determine how we can safely do the same. Our kids can't sustain this, families can't. I'm assuming the additional workload on the teachers is exhausting. I mean, I praise, you know, I hear that the Teachers Association and what they're saying, but I know that there are teachers out there that also would like to be in person because it's harder on them to have this dual classroom model. Please get the kids back in school through in-person learning. They need that curriculum that's consistent. So thank you again for stepping up and getting us into hybrid. I know it's a lot of work, but please don't stop there. Please figure out how to get us safely in school.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Patty, do we have any additional?
We do. Let's see. Alyssa Daniel.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all for your time and your public service that you provide to the community. My name is Alyssa Daniel, and I am a community member, and I'm also a non-union Winthrop Public Schools teacher at Winthrop High School. I teach science and engineering, and I've been a public school teacher for 20 years. This isn't my first call. This is my third call into the school committee. And one of the things I didn't plan on speaking tonight, so I don't have anything really written formally, but I did just want to comment on the 6-foot distance mandate that the union was talking about. And one of the comments that I want to make is that this 6-foot distance mandate is going to prohibit full-time in-person learning for our students. And I just want to make a couple of comments on the concerns of any union members about the 6-foot distance. Teachers will still be able to maintain safety precautions that they feel are appropriate for them in terms of transmission of the virus. The mandate of 6 feet of distance for students is what is prohibiting full in-person learning. If that can be rolled back to the 3-foot guideline that many school districts across this country are abiding by, then we would be able to return to full in-person learning. And I would like to say that parents will have the option to choose whether or not they want to send their student to school at a 3-foot distance. So it won't be mandated on parents of the community if they don't feel safe sending their child to school. They will still continue to have the option of keeping their child remote. The teachers will still certainly be able to keep their 6-foot distance from students, and will alleviate a lot of the problems that many of the callers have already talked about. The biggest of which I would like to talk about for a moment is the equity issue. I see a massive equity issue as a teacher for students that are our most vulnerable students in this community. And I'm not talking just about students that have special needs. I'm talking about students that don't have consistent Wi-Fi, students that don't have consistent supervision, students that need to be in person with their teachers in order to better learn. And this equity issue continues, and each and every month that those students are not in school full time, they are getting further and further behind students in other districts or students in private schools that are in-person learning. And it's just really disturbing to me. I'm a huge believer in public education. I've been doing this for 20 years. Most teachers come into public education because they're so passionate about helping most vulnerable populations, and they are the ones that are suffering the most. So in summary, please rethink your 6-foot distance mandate. Teachers can still certainly maintain their 6 foot of distance. And if we can get our students to the safe 3-foot distance that many districts are at, we could return to in-person learning.
Thank you. Patty, do we have any additional?
We do not. That is the end of public comment.
Okay, I'll be closing out public comment and moving on to general information and recommendations. Delegates and visitors, we have none. Next up is our minutes. Minutes of January 25th, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of January 25th, 2021?
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Swope. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Matucci. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Patty, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory. Miss-
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Next up is our financial and business procedures, warrant SVW 21-13 in the amount of $132,269.27. Can I have a motion for that warrant in that amount?
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Powell, seconded by Mr. Matucci. Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. Patty, can I have a roll call vote for the record?
Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay, moving on, we have payroll warrant SPW 21-14 in the amount of $719,924.41. I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Swope. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Ms. Powell. Any discussion on the warrants, on the payroll warrants? Hearing none. Patty, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Abstain.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Abstain.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Abstain. Okay, moving forward, we have buildings and grounds. There are none. General reports. We had a subcommittee report. Mr. Matucci, where I'm chairing the meeting. Can you bring us through that, please? Just that we've met and that there's progress and negotiations are ongoing.
Yes, we met pertaining to the superintendent's contract. There is an extension for a 1-year period, and we are currently in negotiations to get that done.
Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll be bringing that forward publicly in a very short period once those matters are worked out.
It's 7 o'clock.
Ms. Howard, do you have a report for us this evening?
You're muted.
I feel like I'm muted all the time, so I might as well be muted during the meeting, but my apologies. So first I'll start with thanking all of those folks who have called in. Many of you, as I could see in the chat, are people who have become very dedicated to attending our meetings. And I think it's super important to acknowledge that. Several of you spend the time listening and learning and contacting me or a school committee member to find out details of certain things that you're interested in, but your consistency is certainly appreciated. I'd also like to take just a second to thank our families, our staff, and of course our students. Although our community is higher than most in terms of COVID, and those numbers are coming down, which is super helpful and impressive. This has not been accomplished by chance, to be honest. It's really because of the dedication and steadfast rule following of the protocols that we have put in place thus far. And that includes our families, not sending your kids to school when they're sick. Certainly when you've been exposed, self-monitoring your children at home, and then our students following the rules in our school without hesitation. So that's a huge piece of why we're not seeing in-school spread. Without that, I don't know that we would be so fortunate. I do also think it's important to note, and I applaud the due diligence of folks looking at other school systems. So as your superintendent, I spend an inordinate amount of time having conversations with other superintendents, either in the North Shore Roundtable or just our larger superintendent groups, sharing information, sharing things that have worked for them, sharing different models of learning that they are trying, for the sole purpose of trying to get as many students back in school as possible. I do think it's important to understand that comparing schools sort of just at a surface level doesn't really paint the whole picture of what schools look like and what different schools are able to do. So one of the school systems tonight that was mentioned just happened to pique my interest only because I spent some time speaking with that superintendent as early as Friday. And their students are in person attending school 4 days a week. What's missing from that sort of surface discussion about that school compared to Winthrop Public Schools, those students are dismissed every day prior to lunch. So those students are in school pretty much for a half a day, 4 days a week. They get dismissed and do not eat lunch at school, which pulls out the large gathering and the distancing issues in our cafeterias. And they also go home, and the second part of their day is primarily asynchronous. So there are differences in models, certainly that have to be understood. So I would ask if folks are looking at those models and comparing us, just be mindful that there's a lot involved in each model, and to do that deeper level work of seeing what is it that is actually happening during the school day that is allowing for that. I can tell you that's a lot of the work that we do as superintendents when we're looking to each other for support and for just different perspectives on how we may accomplish what we're all trying to accomplish, which is getting our kids back to school full time. An update on sort of something that has been the bane of my existence for 18 straight days, and certainly concerning to parents, is our internet issue. So that incident started on the 19th, and I'm going to give you a brief but a little bit involved description of where we were and where we're at. We started off with some slow internet and interruptions that eventually, over a period of days, turned into completely shutting down at some point, and then coming back up at odd times, such as 2:30 or 3 o'clock. Our outside technology provider who manages our servers and some other high-level stuff is Retrofit, and Comcast is our internet service provider. So we collaborated with them over the period of a few days, and they were looking at the stability and the slowing, and then it growing increasingly more, and making some changes in our systems, such as eliminating some switches and consolidating some switches, searching for suspicious activity, blocking unknown traffic and IP addresses. But as the interruptions became more frequent and a pattern became evident, we knew that this was deeper than our ability to handle it from within. So we reached out with the help of the Winthrop Police Department, giving us some support with the amount of technology and security that they deal with on a daily basis. They reached out to us and provided us with a couple of different places that we could reach out to get some more support and to dig deeper into this, as we knew, even though we were putting different things in place, things were not getting better. With the additional support of Lantel Security Systems and Balsam Technology, which is another IT support, we brought those folks on board. So through the collaborative efforts of those folks, Lantel, Balsam Technology, our own technology company, which is Retrofit, and Comcast, as well as our own internal tech support staff that we have working here in the Winthrop Public Schools, we were able to determine that those recent issues experienced by the Winthrop Public Schools and some of our municipal offices, meaning the town hall and DPW and some of the other buildings that circle through the public schools servers to get to their internet, they were the result of what is known as a DNS amplification DDoS attack. So 18 days ago, I had absolutely no idea what that meant, nor did I really want to know what it actually stood for. I just wanted to know how to fix it. We identified that those attacks were targeting the Winthrop Public Schools internet. Every 5 to 10 minutes, bursts were occurring, and they started off slow and random, and then they became a pattern that took place between 8 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think it's important to note that those attacks were only taking place on days that we had in-person learning. So they weren't taking place on Wednesdays, and they were not taking place at night. And I can tell you they weren't taking place at night because oftentimes I am sitting here doing work and my internet was not slow or going down. So it's also important to know, after going through this whole process and dealing with other schools, because I reached out onto the superintendent listserv seeking the advice of some fellow superintendents, and learned that this is happening in multiple school districts. And then at the end of this investigation, I learned from Homeland Security as well as Balsam Technology and Comcast that this is a pattern that is rising and significant in public schools across the entire state. So as of Thursday night, which was the 4th of February, the issue itself, the internet stability, had been mitigated by the implementation of security measures that are used to stop this type of activity, human initiated activity, happen. Friday morning, so that was done through Comcast. Comcast was able to put an internet mitigation package on the internet for the school district. And what it does is it stops any DDoS attack at the level of Comcast. So before it leaves Comcast and gets to our firewall, which was slowing our internet, it is stopped at the Comcast level. At this point, based on what has been put in place and what we have seen as of Friday, and as well as today being Monday, we believe that that issue has now been resolved. Folks may at home remember Friday morning there was some unstable internet activity with Zoom. What we learned very quickly is now that we have this mitigation package put on and we've engaged Balsam Technology as well, they can quickly call Comcast and determine why Zoom was slow, and they did that. And the reason being was this software saw the flood of internet activity through Zoom, because Zoom is our primary way of teaching our students, and it automatically blocked it from coming in because it looked suspicious. With one quick phone call, we were able to whitelist Zoom and get stop Zoom from being blocked, allowing us to move forward. From that point all through today, and my fingers are crossed, and I'm not a betting person. However, I believe that has been resolved. So during the assessment of all of this, we had done a number of things. We added additional Netflow monitoring on our sonic wall. Let me tell you, 18 days ago, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. I now know that it's something that wouldn't have helped us during a DDoS attack, but it will help us moving forward because it collects and records real-time information about all of our connections that are going in and all of the connections that are coming out of our school system. We also added additional SNMP monitoring of all the major switches in real time, which allows us a network map to show where things are connected. So if there is any other device that gets brought into the system that's not recognized by the system, we will be alerted and able to shut that down. We also, during that investigation, so these are some of the things that were done prior to recognizing it was a DDoS attack, we revised our bandwidth management. And so it's now configured on our sonic firewall, and that prevents any device in the system from exceeding more than 30 megabytes of bandwidth. We have in our school district 1 gigabyte of bandwidth, and that is exactly what the Chelsea Public Schools has for their bandwidth and internet. So what I'm told is that our bandwidth itself is at or above our need, and the DDoS attack is what shut that down, and that we have more than enough bandwidth to support our systems, but not certainly to stop a DDoS attack. So the end result, what we did in the end with the instability issue, just to kind of recap, once we confirmed with Lantel and Balsam that there was a DDoS attack, we asked for additional information from them about whether or not anything was access that shouldn't be. And so it was confirmed with that company that there was no indication of any unauthorized access to data or malware or impact to any hardware and software, for the primary reason that it never got through the school's firewall. What it did was it took the firewall, took all the use of the firewall, which then is what saturated our bandwidth. So it never made it through the firewall, but it caused the firewall, lack of better terms, to go a little bit nuts and suck up all the bandwidth and therefore not allow us to conduct business. We've also now fully contracted with Comcast. They're our internet service provider, and for the DDoS mitigation services. We started off with an emergency mitigation service through Comcast, which is an extremely costly measure. We managed to negotiate with them, given our circumstance and the fact that they are a provider in this community for our entire community, to waive that fee. And they have done that for us. Moving forward, we will work with E-Rate to ensure that a monthly subscription to this mitigation service is something that we always have to avoid any future impact. Future planning, to ensure that we don't have this issue again, and to make sure that we are up to date with all of our switches and points, data points for our switches, as well as our firewalls. I have submitted the E-Rate to make sure that they are knowledgeable of the fact that we may be ordering switches. First, we need to do an evaluation of our own system to ensure that we're not buying things that we don't need, and hopefully getting an evaluation of that system to tell us what else we need to update. Through this whole process, we have learned that do need some updating of some of our switches, but again, that was not the reason we had a shutdown. The reason was absolutely tied to the DDoS attack. And moving forward, however, we want to plan for no other interruptions in our service. I think it's important to note as well that I know that there were concerns out there that we had provided hotspots for teachers. I can assure you that that was not a plan to resolve our internet issue. What it was a plan to make sure that we could, at a minimum, interrupt learning. The DDoS attack and mitigation package was put on prior to those hotspots arriving for our teaching staff. What we have learned throughout this process is those hotspots are valuable. Whether a classroom goes down because a switch fails, whether there is an electricity issue or some type of other access issue, those hotspots are going to remain with our teaching staff so that they'll be able to use them and hopefully not have to go through this ever again, would be the plan. A couple of other little points, and then I'll take questions. We've done the dashboard. So the dashboard we've talked about for the last several weeks is our own internal reporting or gathering of information about COVID within our schools. We have placed this on the website. I have not yet put a statement above it to fully explain it to people. I will make sure that that gets done this week. But it is on the website under the school reopening tab. And then there's a tab on the side that says Winthrop Public Schools COVID data. These weekly reports are the number of COVID-19 cases that are reported to the Winthrop Public Schools related to both students who are in-person learning and students who are registered students that are fully remote. So has to do with Winthrop Public Schools only, pre-K to 12 students who are in fact tested positive, and that is reported to the school, whether it be through the Board of Health or a parent. Our dashboard does not contain the same data that DESE is reporting on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis regarding in-person learning students. It's a total different sort of data gathering. So the one that Department of Education puts out is one in which we call into them all of our numbers, our in-person learning, our remote students, and our in-person staff. What they're reporting is only students that are in-person learning within 7 days of a positive case. So I say that because I don't want folks comparing those two and then making commentary that we're giving some data, we're giving data to parents on a website that's totally different than the data that is being reported by the Department of Education. Although that's factually true, it's not a trick. I'm telling you up front that the data that we're giving you on the school's dashboard is reflective of the numbers that we are aware of. It's also inclusive of staff. So the numbers you see on the school's website are inclusive of staff members who are COVID positive, who get a report of being COVID positive, and they work within our school buildings. As many people know, we have staff members who, for ADA accommodation reasons, so staff members who have an actual disability, which requires an accommodation, which we considered it and approved. If one of those staff members were to become COVID positive, because they're not physically in our school buildings, they would not be in those numbers. So I just want to be very clear about that. Folks can access that. I am going to update it on a weekly basis. It's a moment in time. So on a Thursday when I post it, if there are 4 more students that come in after the posting, they will be caught up in the next group. But these are the, in the next report, which would be the following Thursday. The next thing I want to talk about is, many folks talked about it tonight, parents expressing they're wanting us to have students return to school 4 days a week or 5 days a week, returning back to those days we had prior to COVID hitting us. So as you folks may remember, back in October and then again in November, I provided the school committee with a plan in which we were returning students from our full remote to the hybrid learning model. That plan was revised a number of times with dates. We started out with our high need students, returning them first back in October, then increasing that to another level of return of high need students in December, and then returning our own students, which we had hoped to do in December, our general ed students in the hybrid 2-day-a-week model. We had hoped to do that in December, and we ended up being able to start it on January 4th. Throughout that process, the administrative team has continued to meet, knowing that what we presented to parents in choosing the full remote or the hybrid model, we also informed them that at some point for the spring semester or the third semester of school, we were going to be reopening that for the students who are fully remote by choice to opt into the hybrid model if families now felt safe to do that. And we also have we also made it clear that we were going to offer students who were in hybrid to opt out to fully remote. Now, mind you, there's been some of that happening for various individual reasoning throughout this process. So our administrative team has been meeting to continue to talk about that next step. The next step, it certainly is going to include us doing a number of things to prepare for that spring opening. And initially, the conversation has been started around that process, finding out, I'm just going to go through a couple of topics. So the leadership team is coming back together. Ironically, tomorrow is our next meeting to continue the process to review how many students that we're going to potentially have going in either direction. We know with the total number of remote students that we have, that each one of those students would have the opportunity to now become a hybrid student. So just some updated numbers at the K-2 level. We have 79 students that are total remote students, full remote students, no hybrid learning. At the 3 to 5 coming school, we have 98 students out of 397 that are fully remote. At the middle school, we have 134 students who are currently fully remote out of 457. And at Winthrop High School, we have 204 students out of 556 that have chosen full remote. So that total, just for an overall understanding, out of 1,843 students, we have 550 students currently fully remote and 1,328 students that are participating in a hybrid model. So the fully remote model students, the 515 students, will be given the opportunity to now come back into the hybrid model. So there has to be planning done prior to that taking place. We have to finalize the date and the messaging that will be sent to parents prior to their return and prior to us asking them what is their intent. You need that information because we will then have to look at the capacity of our classrooms in the current configuration that we have, which is 6-foot distancing. So we will look at that and have that information ready to further plan and redesign some of our classrooms. So if we find out that there are X amount of students returning to the 3rd grade, we need to make sure if the current model is at 6 feet or if it changes to a different number, that we can fit those students in the class, that we have enough desks, and that we go ahead and do our due diligence in planning to make sure we're ready for those students upon return. We are also continuing to identify our at-risk students and our ELL students. And those are students who we have yet to phase back in. So we've phased many of them back in, and it's by category. There are still students who have yet to phase back in and may opt to do so in the next round. We're revisiting our space capacity now that students have returned to the classroom, and one might say, well, you know, I thought you already knew that. We did know that when we opened up onto hybrid. Now that kids are in school and they're utilizing those spaces every day, we've learned that how that 6-foot distancing works, how it looks in each classroom, what spaces we still have available and are able to use. I don't know if anyone has been in the cafeteria, probably not if you're not a student or a teacher, because we don't let anyone in. However, if you walked into the cafeteria, you would think you were in a large classroom because the desks, we've moved away from tables to maximize the number of kids we can have in the space. And you would see rows of desks, individual desks, 6 feet apart, where our students are sitting and having their lunch with no mask on, obviously, in that space, hence the 6-foot distancing in the cafeterias. So we're looking at how we're using that space. Are we using it to our maximum capacity? And we've learned a lot about that. So as we move to the next phase, that's more information for us to be able to say how we can add to that space. How many more chairs can we put in? How many more desks can we put in? What alternative unused spaces can we now use? We thought we were going to need them, and then we figured we didn't. So all that information is being crunched by the administrative team, as well as our custodial staff, certainly, and with the input of our teachers. And we are preparing, all that preparation is being done so that I can report that information back to the school committee as the spring semester is upon us. Last thing I'll talk about tonight is the vaccination update. So we have been working closely with Meredith Hurley and the town. I'm sure Meredith is informing the town council about what's going to happen with vaccinations when the vaccine comes to our community, and expressing our interest and willingness to open up for a vaccination site for our teachers, because the faster we get our teachers vaccinated, the better off we are all going to be. So if we are able to offer that site, if enough vaccinations come in when it's the time for teachers to receive their vaccinations, we're working with the school to see how quickly and efficiently we can pull that off to make sure our staff is safe, so we can continue to do what it is that we do, which is teach children. So let me just check my notes to see if I had anything else. And I believe that is it. I'm ready to say I'm open for questions. I don't know how much I have left to give. I can be honest with you, but if you have questions about technology, I can tell you that I can probably answer them, which is a little bit scary because I knew almost nothing about switches, bandwidth, saturation, DDoS mitigation, how that happens. And let me tell you, although people think you should have known, why didn't you plan for that? How did you not see it coming? There is really not a lot to see. There is a lot of digging and investigation that is required, and everybody is vulnerable when it comes to DDoS. That is something that I did learn very quickly. So I open that up for anything anyone wants me to expand on, although I was lengthy.
Ms. Barry?
Yes, I actually have a question for you, Brian. Is now an appropriate time to make a motion regarding the plan for return to school, or would you prefer I wait till new business?
I'd prefer you wait till new business, just so that we can finish up if there's any other questions, so we don't break the flow of, if that's appropriate. Swope?
Thanks, Brian. Lisa, can you give me a breakdown of, and maybe this is better for Meredith, I'm not sure, but maybe you know too, the staff, the number of cases of COVID for staff that are remote versus hybrid and students that are remote versus hybrid?
So I'll speak and then Meredith can jump in if she has anything different than me. But staff remote versus hybrid, I can tell you that we are not tracking the staff that is completely remote because there is zero need to do that. They don't come in contact with our students. They're not in our buildings. Many don't live in our community. So of the people that are fully remote, many don't live in our community. Meredith, therefore, would not know their COVID status. But it is sort of irrelevant for us to have that information just because they're not physically present. In terms of the students, I do not track it. I shouldn't say I do not track it. We do track it that way. And if you're asking for a number, your best bet would be to look at the dashboard. It will tell you week by week how many students were positive that were fully remote or in person. That's how I have it broken down by school. So instead of me sort of looking at that and telling it to you, it's easily accessible on that.
Okay, I thought it was maybe 30 hybrid. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And
in total,
yeah,
started tracking. So I would have to add it up to give you an accurate number for the totals. However, you'll see on the website from December, I believe it's December 16th or 23rd to date, the total numbers that were remote or hybrid.
Yeah, I tried that tonight. I'll go back and take a look at it. Maybe I just didn't get it. And one more question, Brian, if it's all right. I looked, maybe you all sent it to me about what's happening in Framingham, where they're asking that the teachers and the students who are over 16 get vaccinated. Did you see that?
I did not send that out, but I don't know if anyone else shared that on the committee.
Did somebody else share it? I'm the only one that got it? But I just thought it was an interesting strategy for the town to say, let's prioritize our students and our teachers, early on. So I don't know. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it.
Does anyone have any further questions for Ms. Howard for report? Mr. Martucci?
Chairman? Yep, please. Just wanted to see if we had an update on returning to in-person school committee meetings.
Yes. So that was something that I skipped clearly. So I think I reported at the last school committee meeting that we were looking at space within the school, school buildings to be able to provide that, which we have. And clearly, any school space that you use will be impacted by alternate use. However, from a size perspective, you're really looking at so that it can be seen on camera and places where you could videotape it. You're looking at the Neil Shapiro Auditorium, which is, you can sort of maximize your distancing. It would be a different look on that stage than before. So as opposed to that long table to get 6 foot distancing between members and people that would need to participate in the meeting, you would have to reconfigure that. And we're pretty good at that, but you would be sitting sort of like my students in the cafeteria are sitting. So you'd be in the rows versus at a long table. And then in terms of the ability for WCAT to be able to film that, WCAT had reported that as long as we are following social distancing, that in the way that we're supposed to be following it, according to CDC, that they would be comfortable in videotaping it. And in terms of gatherings, I did have conversation with the school's attorney, as well as read some of the work that came back to the town council from K&P, and their recommendations around the gatherings are, and that we stick to the state gathering guidelines. And school districts, as many people know, are exempt in theory from the gathering guidelines, because if we weren't, then we couldn't have more than 25 kids in school inside a building at once. However, the interpretation of the gathering as it relates to schools, from what I'm to understand, is that it's the gathering rules are sort of don't have to be followed by school districts when it's pertaining to students or teachers teaching and learning in that environment. When it comes to meetings, there's actually an advisory from the Department of Education that says anything that is not related to the day-to-day school business of students and teachers and learning should be kept at a minimum of no more than 10 people in a space. And meetings and such should be conducted via Zoom or other alternative methods in which you are not in person as much as possible. So that's the information I have gathered. I've also asked our attorney and just asked very surfacely other school districts what they are doing. Many are not meeting in purpose, and some of the reasoning behind that is the risk versus what it is that you're actually doing. So, you know, what's more prevalent? Are you more at risk for doing it? And then what would be the good part of putting folks at risk for the purpose of the meeting? And that information is that I received back. Most are still meeting via Zoom or another platform so that they are not causing undue costs to schools, such as repetitive cleaning, bringing staff in to clean after folks left if they had to do that, monitoring. So if there's contact tracing, having somebody there to do the contact tracing and make sure everybody who's present, if it's larger gatherings and they're allowing outside people in, you know, that those folks have the contact tracing piece of it. Trying to think if there was anything else that was brought back to my attention. I can't really think of anything else, but that was just the additional information. So yes, we could do it at the Neil Shapiro Center. What would be the benefit of doing it? I'm not really sure. I am somewhat worried that people won't be able to really hear you. And I know you can have microphones and whatnot, but when people have on masks and they're talking into a microphone and they're also being projected into families' living rooms or on your iPad if you're watching it, I don't know how well you'll hear them. I also worry about participation. We've seen a wealth of participation in our school committee meetings since they have gone into you know, a virtual mode. I would hate to lose that opportunity. I know we can still Zoom from, you know, a physical place. However, again, we'd have to have folks involved to be doing that work for the school district after hours to be doing that. So that's all the information I've gathered. I will conduct myself at any meeting, any way the school committee decides that will be done, whether it's in person or continuing to do Zoom. As you can tell from my background, I'm not in my living room, so it really doesn't have an impact on me, except for the safety piece of being in person. However, I'm in schools every day. So for you folks, it's a little different. You're not a teacher, you're not a superintendent. You are not somebody that needs to be in front of children. That is very different than the sort of the optics of teachers being in person. And I understand the comparison at a surface level. However, school committee members to conduct business don't necessarily have to physically be in a room, from what I can see. But it is certainly information you asked me to bring back, probably not my opinion that you wanted. It just sort of fell out while I was talking. So that's all I have on that.
Mr. Matucci?
Yeah, so I guess, so we're able to meet in the Neil Shapiro room with 10 people, no more than 10. I think we need to lead by example. The teachers are in there, they're working, and the administrators, and they're working, but I think that we need to be in there as the leaders of the school department. And I would make a motion that we have our next meeting in person at the Neil Shapiro Auditorium.
We just make sure that if some members would like the option to be remote, that they have that.
Shouldn't it be done under new business or unfinished business rather than here in a report?
I agree. Are we going to close out? Is there any further question? Mr. Matucci, I'd ask to hold that motion just until we get to new business.
Thank you, sir.
Next segment. Does anyone have any further questions for Ms. Howard? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. I believe, Julie, you had a piece of new business you wanted to bring forward.
Yes. Please bear with me. This is a two-part motion. I'd like to make a motion to conduct a study exploring the return of all students to in-person learning 4 days a week on the 5th, but no later than the start of the 4th academic quarter, pending a report of how 3, 4, 5-foot distancing impacts spacing for each school. I'd like to request that the superintendent present this study to the school committee no later than March 8th. And the purpose of the study is for the school committee to fully understand the impacts that spacing will have for each school and the number of students that can be accommodated.
Julie, can I ask you to make that motion again? There was a lot of extraneous background noise. And if I could just ask that people please mute your microphones so that we can clearly hear the motion.
Yes. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to conduct a study exploring the return of all students to in-person learning 4 days a week on April 5th, but no later than the start of the 4th academic quarter, pending a report of how 3, 4, and 5 feet distancing impacts spacing for each school. The request would be for the superintendent to present this study to the school committee by March 8th so that we can fully understand the impacts of the spacing and how it impacts, the number of children and what the spacing requirements would be per school for a full return.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Ms. Swope?
Julie, how did you come up with the 3, 4, and 5 feet in terms of health?
Yes, so when you look at the DESE requirements, it reads as this: what are the guidelines for safe distancing requirements between students? Medical experts advising DESE have stated the distance of 6 feet is preferred whenever feasible, but that the minimum acceptable distance is 3 feet when done in combination with masks and other safety measures. Establishing a minimum physical distance of 3 feet between students when masks are worn is informed by evidence and substantiated by guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization. It is the practice in several other countries that have successfully reopened their school. So my suggestion of 3, 4, and 5 feet is, okay, well, we know that we can't fit all students back into schools at 6 feet distance. It will not work. So Can we fit them all in at 5 feet? Can we fit them all in at 4 feet? Can we fit them all in at 3 feet? So in other words, what is the maximum distance between kids that we can fit in the schools, allowing for a full return?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Berry, my question is this a request to have the superintendent study and bring back to us to vote at that meeting?
Yes, so the intent would be to vote at that meeting, but for now I want to establish a motion to set this study in motion so that we know what this study is for and why we would be voting on it tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Boncory.
Yeah, I just have a question, 2 questions for Julie. I'm in favor of getting the kids back to school as fast as possible. I've changed my mind from what I've been seeing going on, and I think it's important that we get the kids back as soon as we can. I don't know why you want to put the burden on the superintendent to check out 4 feet, 5 feet, and so on, when we already know that we're never going to fit unless we go to the 3 feet. So why not just do the test on the 3 feet, and why not do the test as the full 5 days? Why are we making it 4 days instead of a full 5-day return?
Yep, I can answer all of those questions. So in regards, I'll start with the last bit of your question, which is the 4-day versus the 5-day. In the memorandum of agreement that we have with the teachers, there is a statement in there that the teachers are able to teach remotely on Wednesdays. And I want to avoid having to go back to negotiations, A. B, I think we should still be able to clean the schools on Wednesdays, which would be helpful since we would be shrinking the distancing. We would want to have other appropriate things in place to help mitigate. So I think a deep cleansing on Wednesdays makes sense. In regards to your question about having Lisa and her team conduct a study regarding 3, 4, and 5 feet spacing, because I think this is going to vary by school and based on the number of children that will be coming back full time versus staying remote. And I think in some schools we may be able to keep a distance of 4 feet, and I think in some schools we may have to go to 3 feet, and in some rooms. So it's really maybe it's not doing a 3, 4, and 5 foot study, but it's more what is the maximum distance we can accommodate in each building per class.
Mr. Capabianco.
Thank you. So I would just like to confirm that a part of this study, a vaccine distribution plan is in this to make sure every staff member with their public schools has the option to be vaccinated.
I believe that would be covered by Ms. Barry's motion.
Just wanted to confirm it.
Ms. Saward, can you confirm that that will be part of your study?
Yeah, so I just would need a little clarification on what's being requested in terms of the vaccine piece of it. So vaccine distribution and the process of vaccinating the staff is not something that the school district has determined that they are organizing or putting in place. To be clear, it's something that we're supportive of. We have been engaged in conversation about getting it to happen as soon as possible with the town council and with Meredith Hurley. But in terms of the school district, setting it up, organizing it, rolling it out, and ensuring that it is happening, that is a responsibility that is not on the school department to do, nor can we, I shouldn't say nor can we, because the school committee can mandate teachers be vaccinated, but that we have not chosen to take, the school committee has not chosen to take that path at this point. So we can't tell people when to get vaccinated. As a matter of fact, I would encourage any teacher who can get vaccinated before we are able to, and if we are able to host a site and an event to do that, to go ahead and do so. So I certainly can give continuous updates on where the discussions are with the community and Meredith, and what we have decided to do in terms of opening the school buildings and making our teachers known that this is available to them. If that may have been the intent of the question, Mr. Capabianco, I'm not sure.
My point is, say you come to us with a recommendation saying we should return X day. I think it should be in the, vaccines will be distributed in the town or at this location on, say, March 25th, something to that extent. I mean, it should be a step-by-step process. And I'm all in favor, but we have to have a vaccination plan.
That's a good point, Mr. Capabianco, that,
And by the way, it could be mandated if we move religious exemptions, which some school districts are doing. Just pointing that out there.
Yeah, so you can remove it, you can add it as a term and condition of employment. So the
Yep.
school district could add a vaccination as a term or a condition of employment. You cannot exempt anybody from the exemption. So we can't say as a school district that it's a term and condition of your employment. And by the way, irregardless of whether or not you have a religious or a health exemption, we don't have the authority to do that, just for clarity. And I know we have some attorneys sitting on board. I did clarify that with an attorney. However, feel free if I'm speaking out of turn to correct me.
You can't do it with employees, but I believe you could do it with students. Because I remember I was a few years ago worried about the anti-vax movement. This was in our policy committee, and it was deemed that you could do it with students. We just didn't take that route.
So I don't know, Meredith can jump in if she's still on. I don't believe there is any vaccination requirement for children under the ages of something. Am I correct, Meredith?
Related to COVID vaccine in
Yes.
particular?
Yes.
Yeah, no, so there's been no,
Vaccinations in general, polio, measles, that's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay.
Meredith.
yes, so there's been no official guidance. And I feel like even at the state level, they're not indicating that it's going to be mandated. It's still in the clinical trials phase of the safety and efficacy in those under the age of 16 and 18. So I think it'll still be a bit of time before we see solid mandates coming down.
I think the important thing here is that we research the ability to obtain those shots, those vaccines for teachers. And even if it's not mandatory, that the opportunity is given to them for those that do want it.
I agree.
Is that the intent, Mr. Capabianco?
Exactly the intent.
Does anyone have any further questions for Ms. Howard? Excuse me, Ms. Barry, as to her motion? Ms. Swope.
I just wanted, Julie, I just wanted to ask if you would think it was a friendly amendment to suggest that after teachers have afforded the availability of getting vaccinated.
So you're suggesting, would I consider holding until teachers were vaccinated?
Yes.
No,
Give me-
I think they're two different things. I think they're two different topics.
Suzanne,
But
you
I
can
think
make the motion.
my comments show that this will be part of this.
Just a minute. Point of order. Suzanne, you could make that motion. It would have to be seconded, discussed, and you could make an attempt to amend that motion.
Point of information.
Yes.
I think my question would assure that that'll be part of the study that we will be voting on.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
That was my intent.
Yeah.
All right, then I accept that.
Question isn't an amendment, though.
It wouldn't be to amend, because currently we're not voting on the return date. We are voting on the study for Lisa Howard to come back and report back to us the pros, the cons, what the different plans are for different schools, different places, but also to take into account teachers having the ability to be vaccinated, and where we are in that process.
Okay, so that would be a part of that study.
Study, yes.
Okay.
I hold on. I don't think that teachers being vaccinated is contingent on us returning to school full time.
It's not, Julie, but your motion is to study, and I think that's one of the areas of study that could be brought back. We're not bound by this. We're just, as we said, it is a study just to see, and I think that's important too, to see if there's an availability for vaccines for faculty and staff that are student facing. So
Yep, I understand.
It could be bound.
I understand it's an availability study, but as a school committee, we can't control teachers getting vaccines. but we can control the date that students go back to school. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that.
So, and to clarify, this is not a vote for a drop dead date. This is a vote for a date for the superintendent to come back. And all we're asking for her to do is to give us the pros, the cons, and to do a study to see where we're at, the validity of all these different options, and then report them back, and then we vote. So I don't see the vaccine for teachers as being a mandate. I think it's just important that we know where we're at that time. And if there is the availability for that to happen prior to that date, that we have that option to look at that as well.
Can we look at them as two separate motions then? Can we look at my motion as its own and then also a separate motion for the vaccination study?
I don't think you can, because then you'd have to specifically exclude different areas for the superintendent to review. I mean, we're asking her to go back to do measurements, to do certain things and report back what can and cannot be done and what our options are. And so I don't think we need to go back and have two separate motions. It's just going to report back. And when that time comes, we would vote on whether or not that date is viable. And whether the options that the superintendent has provided can be done safely.
All right.
I would like to consider both 4 and 5 days. And the reason is that I don't want us to come to a point where we could possibly vote. I understand what Julie is saying, what Ms. Berry is saying about the teacher's contract and not wanting to go into, but that's not, we're looking for a study and we're asking what it would take to do this. So I would like to include the 5 days because I would like to have that option available when we do go forward.
Yeah, fine.
I agree. We don't want to tie your hands at any level. I'm just asking that we give Ms. Howard enough leeway to look at all options and report back, and then we'll have all that information to make a decision based upon.
So can I propose an amendment that I would like to propose an amendment that we include a 5-day option as part of this study.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Barry. Any further discussion? Okay, everyone understands what they're voting on, that this is a mandate to the superintendent to review the options that are available, report back. What was the date of the meeting? I'm sorry, Ms. Barry.
March 8th.
March 8th, at which time the school committee will have the opportunity to weigh those options and take a vote on moving forward with that live learning.
And I'm sorry,
Yes.
Does this also include looking at the possibility of vaccinating teachers?
It is giving Ms. Howard the opportunity to go back to review all options and come back with different ideas on and information on what she suggests and what is and is not viable, including whether or not there are vaccinations available for teachers at that time. But
Thank
it's
you.
not a mandate that be part of it.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Patty, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Miss Barry? Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes.
Thank you, and I'll have that information in hand as of prior to the 8th for the committee, so that you're aware of what is coming. And just to stress that although this is work to do, it's not work that we wouldn't otherwise be doing for the most part. So yes, it is work. However, a lot of this information is reflective of the discussions that we have at administrative level, each week, and more importantly on targeted dates, and adding to that a few other bits of information around the impacts. I think it's super important for And I applaud the school committee for asking for it and listening to our parents and our families. And the reason I applaud you is making decisions on such significant matters requires information. For the school committee to make an informed decision that impacts over 1,800 children and, you know, obviously their families as well. To do that without doing what you're doing right now, I think you would be remiss. I think collecting this data to support how the school committee is going to move forward, an informed decision-making process in which you're taking everything into account for every child, not just the students whose families want them to come back full-time, not just the students who want to remain fully remote, not just the students and families that want to wait for teachers to be vaccinated, not just for teachers who want to wait or teachers who are ready to come back now. You're taking all the information in and asking for all opportunities to look at data to support your decision. And I applaud you for that. And I am happy to do that work on behalf of the students that I'm responsible to take care of. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate the motion.
I appreciate the motion as well. There was another motion that Mr. Matucci wished to make.
Yep. Seeing that we can meet in person, no more than 10 people in the Neil Shapiro Auditorium, I would make a motion that we need to lead by example, expecting our teachers to go back to work, and we need to go back in person. It makes things a lot easier with the things that go on in these meetings, obviously. So I would make a motion to go back in person at our next meeting.
Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Barry. Any discussion? Mr. Capabianco.
Just want to make sure those that might be high risk or prefer to meet remotely still have that option. Otherwise, I'm fine with this.
Ms. Howard, has that been confirmed?
So in order to conduct the Zoom meetings and have the staff available to videotape the meetings, and you know, I don't know if that would require additional people to be in, you know, in the physical space. So I'm not sure, because I've sort of lost track of motions, whether or not the motion is to do it
8 o'clock.
with the maximum of 10 people or not, because I'm not sure if there's going to be additional people that will be needed to support that. So I just want to be clear about that for you to think about that. I don't pretend to know that additional people would be available, because what I would not want to see happen is it not be available, because WCAT videotaping it is the obligation for the public to be able to see it. However, if it's not also done via Zoom, I worry about the input of the community that we have grown to be part of these meetings consistently. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the need to make sure that we still have community input, because clearly with 10 people, people can't come to the meeting.
We have more than 10 that are participating right now. Mr. Boncory.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this. We have 13 panelists all the time. Now, if we're going to add WCAT people in the room, you're going to probably need at least 2 of them. And then you're going to have to come in and set up microphones for each individual person who's sitting there. We get 70 to 100 members that come in on the Zoom, citizens and panelists. It seems to be working so well this way. Why change it now? It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm against this.
Mr. Matucci.
So we have 7 members of the committee. We have Lisa's 8. We have Patty that's 9. And there's only 1 person from CAT that's there when the meetings that I've seen that I've been after the last, I don't know, like 12 years, I think I've been doing this. So
looking at the panelists right now, it shows 13.
I know, but I don't think we have to have, there's a couple of people here I don't think it'd have to be here. That's what I'm saying. It's nice if they're here. I think it's great. They can Zoom in if they want. The other thing is, as far as the person that's going to be setting this up can come in and set it up before we get there, I assume, and then leave if they, you know, if you don't want any more than 10 in the room.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Matu? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kevin Bianco.
I'm good with this. I mean, other communities do this. There are a lot of other communities, including Everett, that have done in-person meetings, but I just want to be clear that if a member of this committee or staff can't attend, they have the option to do so. And I wasn't clear on an answer on that. I need clarity to vote on that.
So the opportunity to do so would be dependent upon the technology that we would be able to monitor. As the superintendent, I won't be able to monitor a Zoom meeting, letting people in, letting people out, the quality of people hearing that person, managing the screen that you'd have to project it on so that the community that's watching can see it. I'm not, my technology skills have grown immensely. However, the physical stuff, I'm not 100% spot on with. I can tell you that we have enough bandwidth to do it, that I can assure you of.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Matucci, that we schedule the meeting for live at this point? And if a technology issue presents itself in between through CAT or through the Zoom process, that we notify the committee members and we post it as a Zoom meeting. But for right now, it's set. I believe we set that in our last vote, that it moved forward as a live meeting, provided, as Mr. Capabianco said, people can be participating remotely. And there is no technology issue that prevents it.
I know that Patty runs these meetings on Zoom and she's going to be there. So I think that's, takes care of that problem as far as who's on Zoom, who's not. She does the panelists, she does the attendees. As far as CAT goes, I thought the superintendent said that they could do it. So if they can do it and Patty's going to be here, if there's someone that needs to set us up, before the meeting starts, and then they would leave after they set up whatever they set up in the room, in the auditorium, I think we should be all set, but I would be fine with that.
I think the simple way to do this is to set the meeting for live. And if we get to that point where we can't do it live, we have an alternate date for another meeting. I'm just afraid technology might get in the way if we all show up that evening and it's an issue. I have no problem with the live meeting. We can move forward unless technology stops us, in which case I want to make sure we have an alternate date that we can meet as soon as possible to post the following day.
This is all new, Mr. Chairman, so absolutely, if there's something that's not 100% or there's something that we're missing, like I say, this is all new ground, new charted territory, so we have to absolutely take that into consideration. So I'd be fine with that.
Ms. Swope?
Does this mean, maybe this is directed to the chair. So all these people that call in, they would be still calling in on Zoom, or they would have to come to, as they did before, have to come to the.
Correct. It would be a Zoom. It would be a Zoom-based meeting as well. We would be meeting live. Those on the panel would be meeting live. There would still be the opportunity to participate on a Zoom level.
So that means that if you had 15 people that wanted to make a comment, they would be coming in on Zoom?
Correct.
How would we see them?
Again, I don't know the technology portion of it. That's why I asked that we explore that option. Mr. Matucci?
We don't see them now.
But you hear them. So you just would hear.
We would hear them, right? We wouldn't see them, like we don't see them right now. It would be the same as you hear now.
So just so we're clear, Ms. Swope, it's an opportunity for us to meet live as panelists. Participants could still follow through in the same manner as they do now, which is raising their hand in a Zoom meeting, and we would respond in the same way as we do at this moment.
And just another point, Mr. Chairman, because of my current health situation, I cannot be there in March, but I will be there perhaps later. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure we need to do a vote on that. I believe we have already done that in our past meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Hames?
We did vote before to meet in person, but you have a motion and a second on the floor. I don't know if you want to.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Hames, will you call the roll?
Yes. Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
No.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
No.
Ms. Powell,
No.
Mr. Perrin.
No.
Motion fails, 4-3.
Okay, moving back, we had a personnel matter. I believe we had a retirement. Is that the only portion on the personnel section, Ms. Howard?
So, nope, I think we have a couple more, but my agenda is in a wealth of paperwork right now, so give me a second. Okay, so for appointments, we have one appointment for a junior custodian, Mr. Christopher Yarrow. We have one resignation for an ESP that was filling in for us, covering somebody else's position. She has since returned, Caroline McKinnon, to the court system because they have opened up. So that was good for her and bad for us. However, we are intent on filling that position. We do have a retirement. So at the end of the school year, Miss Maria Flanagan, our history teacher at Winthrop High School, will be retiring. Miss Flanagan, I don't have her paperwork in front of me in terms of how many years. I will speak about that at our next school committee meeting. I was low-key hoping she stuck around for my 7th grader based on her teaching and what she had provided to 3 of my other children. So we will wish Maria Flanagan luck. I do know that she has asked for a buyback of her sick time as well, so you will need to take a vote on that. And the last item under personnel is a posting for the ESP at the high school of the position that I already spoke about in Caroline McKinnon's leaving us to go back to her to another job. Thankfully that the courthouse is open. So you will need to entertain Ms. Flanagan's sick time buyback request.
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Capabianco. Any discussion on the sick day buyback for Ms. Maria Flanagan?
I would actually, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just want to say how sad I am to hear that she's retiring and how happy I am for her. She is by far one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life, made a profound impact on me, and encouraged me at a very young age to be involved in civics. And she took me to Student Government Day at the State House when I was 15 years old, something I never forgot. And she's someone that is very important. I know she made an impact on a lot of kids in this town.
Thank you, Mr. Capabianco. Any further discussion on the retirement buyback? Sick time buyback, I'm sorry. Hearing none. Patty, can you call the roll?
Yes, Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay, I don't see any unfinished business on the table. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
May I?
Oh, Ms. Swope.
I just want to, just a public service announcement. I didn't realize how easy it was to get shots if you're ancient, but I just want to comment about East Boston because East Boston Health is Liverpool Street, for example. You can get a shot the next day and there's lots of people standing around waiting for people to get shots. So whatever you can do to promote that for your grandparents or whatever, it really was quite a good experience. So just let
Ms. Swope,
everybody know.
how does one book that appointment?
I literally called East Boston Health Community Association on Liverpool Street. And it's also on I think Meredith has put it on the website in Winthrop. But there are several facilities in East Boston that are open. And I was so shocked that so few people were there, and there was plenty of room.
Thank you. Mr. Boncory?
Yes, I just want to talk about that as well, because the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center has been very good to us. I want people to be patient, and we've been pushing and fighting to try to get the site in Winthrop to give out vaccinations. And we were working on it for the past week. And thanks to Manny Lopes, the CEO of East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, we are getting vaccine into Winthrop for people. Tomorrow, we will be having 100 vaccines that will be given to second shot-ins that 75 and over. And that's our first batch that we're getting. And the next batch we will be getting, I believe, is coming in this week, and it will be given up at Golden Drive, and we're getting 360 vaccinations to give out there. Meredith is doing a fantastic job working with East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. If you're 75 and older, you can go to any one of their sites right now and get a shot. If you're not 75 and older, you will be coming next. I mean, if you're going to be 65 and over with comorbidities, you will be next in line. The next batch may be a week away, maybe 2 weeks away, but it's not far away. So by March, by April, we should be very well into vaccinating a lot of Winthrop people and bringing this spread down. We lost 21 people over the weekend. I mean, we caught COVID over the weekend, and we did lose one person. One Winthrop died over the weekend from COVID. So the disease is not over, but the cure is here, and the cure is coming quicker than we had hoped. So please be patient. Everybody's going to have a turn, and it's coming quickly. And if Meredith is still on, if you want to say anything, I'm sure they'd be happy to hear even more good news than what I just gave.
Thank you. And thank you to Council President Boncory. He really was a huge advocate connecting my department to East Boston. As he said, they've been a delight to work with. They really want to do good by the communities. You know, I could tell that when they're opening up their vaccine sites to anybody, whether they're in their network or not. I also want to mention too, if people are listening and want to make appointments at any of these sites, you can call the EOC and we can figure out how to get you a ride too. So we have transportation options if that's a barrier for people. I know the weather this week has been a struggle for folks to get out and get vaccinated. So, you know, like you said, we're being allocated 100 from East Boston. We were denied allocation from the state this week, but East Boston stepped in and is helping me at least start to target the shut-ins and those that are unable to get to the vaccine site. So making progress slowly but surely. I'd rather be going in this direction than kind of where we were in the fall. So yeah, it's nice to see.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us that information so people can reach out to get that vaccine and transportation if needed.
Be safe for just a little while longer.
Right,
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
adjourn. Motion.
By Ms. Swope. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Powell. Patty, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco, Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Good night.